So it's October, and this is the time of year of my birthday, and so last year I turned 60. I'm not sure what I turned this year, but, as I reach these ages, I start thinking of myself really differently, and I start thinking sometimes, well, it's mostly over. I'm going to hang around I had this friend who lived in eastern Connecticut who had this chicken that she was really attached to, and the chicken got really old. And one day the chicken was just standing out in the yard, and it just kind of went boom and fell over, and that was it, And I sometimes think, okay, that's what's going to happen to me. But what I don't think, and what I should think, what I'm starting to realize that I should think, particularly based on the interviews that we're about to do here, is that I should think I got 45 more years, during which time I may embark on all kinds of fascinating adventures. I might be productive in ways I hadn't dreamed of so far. I could be publishable 45 years from today. It's a rosy scenario. It doesn't happen to a lot of people, but it does happen to some people, and it did happen to one person. You're going to hear about that one person today. So to help us tell that story in studio, old friend Nancy Slonim-Aroney, and then on the phone with us is Laurie David. Laurie's the producer of An Inconvenient Truth, and she and Nancy are the people who are responsible for what Laurie has edited here, which is called Poems from the Pond. It's a collection written by a remarkable person who I wish you could meet in person. Unfortunately, she departed this earth earlier this year, but you're going to hear all about her. Nancy, I should say, is a commenter for NPR's All Things Considered and the founder of the Chillimark Writing Workshop on Martha's Vineyard. So, Nancy, I'm going to have you begin this story. Introduce us to this poet and tell us how you knew her.
Okay, so 15 years ago, she and I were the first speakers at the Chillimark Women's Symposium.
And her name is?
Peggy Friedberg. And after the thing, she actually read a poem. She didn't do a speech. And I went up to her afterwards and I said, oh, my God, I loved what you read. I want to know you. And she was older, and you're always looking for a mentor and an older girlfriend. And I said, can we get together? And she seemed very open to that. And then time moved on, and I didn't do anything. At her 100th birthday, that is correct, 100th birthday, she read again at the Chillimark Library. I went. Loved everything she read. Went up to her afterwards and said, all right, this time, seriously, I'm calling you. She said, please do. And then, Dan got sick, my life got complicated, and I did not call her. And then one day, 3 people's faces appeared in front of me. Stanley Edelstein, my gynecologist from this town. I just passed his office, his former office. Linda, a gal from Hebrew school. And this guy, Doug, who took my first workshop at the gas company. All 3 faces seriously passed in front of my face. And each one, I said, I got to call Doug. I got to call Stan. I got to call Linda. I did not call any of them. Within 4 days, all 3 of them died. It blew me away. I made a pact with myself. I said, the next person whose face comes in front of me, and luckily it's not yours, was Peggy. I picked up the phone. I called Peggy. I said, Peggy, this is Nancy Aroney. I have a poet friend visiting. Can we come over? And she said, when? I said, now. She said, okay. And we drove over. She's 2 minutes from my house. And we walked in, and I said, Peggy, this is Jerry. Can you read some of your work to him? She said, I can't. I have macular degeneration. I can't see anymore. I said, can we read to you? She said, I would love that. We read about 4 pieces. And again, I was blown away. And I said, Peggy, how come you're not famous? And she looked at me with dead seriousness, and she said, I don't know. I would have liked that. And I left, and I kept thinking, okay, I'm doing something. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be small. It's just Chillimark. It's just me, but I'm doing something. And I called her, and I said, can your caregiver get you to my studio? And she said, yes. I said, okay, I'm going to do a poetry reading. So I rented 44 chairs. I baked brownies. I had 40 waters. I put it on Facebook. And all these people came, and I had friends read her stuff to her. I made a little table, a little plexiglass table with a lace tablecloth and a stargazer lily and a candle. And I had a seat for Peggy, and I had a chair for the readers. And one by one, people got up and read her stuff. She was very moved, but the audience was blown away.
And part of the audience was you, Laurie David, right? You were there at this reading?
Well, the funny thing was that I didn't know Nancy at the time, but I had heard about this reading, and I had been hearing over the years about this iconic poet, this strange, mysterious poet that lived on the pond. And when I heard that Nancy was doing this little reading, I happened to be on the island in the off-season. It was last fall. I basically invited myself and showed up. And can you imagine if you discovered Mary Oliver at the end of her life, or Emily Dickinson? That's what it felt like to me. I sat in that room, and I could not believe how brilliant and honest and powerful these poems were.
You know, I think I read, Lori, somewhere that you feel as though if you're going to do something, it has to have an element of the ability to change people's lives, and that you felt that way about this particular poetry. Can you say more about that? Why would this poetry change people's lives?
We're all looking for inspiration, right? We're all looking for the answer. This woman, Nancy didn't mention that she was 106 last fall. So when Nancy reconnected with her, she was 106. And she had a lot of wisdom, and she wrote about it. And I really see good poems become your best friends. They're with you 24/7 for your whole life. And who doesn't need more best friends, right? Poetry is powerful. I mean, I just read this Maya Angelou quote, "Poetry is the strongest language we have." And I totally agree with that. And when they resonate with you, when they touch you, when someone who's writing a poem talks about something you're experiencing, well, that is such a powerful connection. You're not alone in the world anymore.
What we wound up with was this wonderful volume that includes, it's a collection of 32 poems by this 106, eventually 107-year-old poet, along with photos of her life on Martha's Vineyard and excerpts from her previously published memoir, Growing Up in Old Age. And, you know, Nancy, reading about her and so she became a writer really about the age of 80, right?
Yes, and at 90 is when she started writing the poetry.
Yeah.
Hello, 90.
And she said a really interesting thing, too, which was, I'm kind of try to recreate this from memory, but that somehow or other, the intersection of fear and beauty was one of the things that made her want to write. That even at 80, she saw the world as incredibly beautiful, but also had fear that somehow or other made her want to write. Can you say more about that on her behalf, Nancy?
You know, what blew our minds was how insecure she was as this wise, old, beautiful, big-hearted woman. And yet there were these insecurities that just, it was like, she's just like all of us. Same kind of worries, same kind of fears. You know, after the reading, she said to me, I wondered why I lived this long. Mm-hmm. And after today, now I know. And that just did it for me. That was like, okay, we gotta let people know. And then Lori said, I have a project I want to do. I got to make this gorgeous book, which she did in a short time.
Colin, I want to go back to your introduction, which I thought was beautiful. Mm. And it really does go to the point. If she hadn't lived to 90, she never would have discovered poetry. Mm-hmm. Like, she didn't start writing until she turned 90. And this ended up being her most powerful and, I think, important work. And it's now being received and shared with lots of people. But if she hadn't lived that long, it never would have happened. And if she hadn't lived to 106,